After hearing all of the presentations, I think we should stick with Alistair though. He's doing great stuff. And dilemmas, wow. Can I just start by saying, the reason I went into that rhetoric about my journey is because I think leadership culture is about trust. I really do. And you've got to engage the individual. You can't just engage the whole organisation to start to understand that level of trust and the engagement that's necessary across the board. And one of the things I was going to say, if I'd had a little bit more time, was to take you back to what I'd said at the start about the three things, the vision that I had. And the last one was building relationships every day. And this goes to the heart of culture, because one of the things that I think can happen to organisations is that they can become very isolated or isolating. And the norm within the organisation becomes the thing that's important because everybody's doing it. And I've heard that said a couple of times here today already. Everyone's doing it, therefore it's all right for me to do it. Now, if you engage widely, both across your organisation, but more importantly outside your organisation, you will have people who will become very strong bellwether guides to where you need to be. They will tell you, particularly the ones that love you the most or support you the most, they will tell you when you're going off the rails or you're making decisions that perhaps you hadn't considered enough. So that issue of culture is one that has to be tested all the time. And in terms of when you start to see behaviours, trends within your organisation that you are concerned about, and this is also part of that, what you walk past and do nothing about is what you accept. You do know when an area is starting to tip towards a culture that's not aligned with that of the organisation. And it's then that you've got to take action. You've actually, you can get in, you can talk to people, you can move people around in our organisations, you can move people, you can get better fit in terms of your leadership, you can develop people. You can put programs in place to make sure that people understand. But at the end of the day, the critical piece is having those principles up there in lights, so everyone knows what's expected of them in the way that they conduct themselves, in the way that they align with the culture, the good parts of the culture, and there are consequences if you don't.
Thanks, Ian. Really insightful. Paul, have you got insight into that issue?
Yeah, look, a lot of that resonates very much. So, frankly, as a leader, if you haven't got that really clear understanding of your organisation, so you really need to be. I'm an arch pragmatist. It sort of comes with the territory. You need to actually be designing your feedback mechanisms, and you really need to get that smoke alarm like concept that's not relying on where you're confident in the organisation or the people that you're confident with. You've got to absolutely design an unbiased feedback loop from within your organisation. Otherwise, you hear what you want to hear, and we're humans. And with enough time and motivation, we can rationalise anything. Whether it's action, organisational behaviour, the reasons for doing these sorts of things. So you have to be brutally honest and upfront with it. And if you're not designing a feedback loop and formal opportunities within your business rhythms, then you're coasting as a leader in that organisation.
Thanks, Paul. Peter.
I wasn't talking about relationships and self-fulfilling prophecies, but my two senior colleagues have touched on those. I wanted to add two more. One's about mission statements. I worked for a large bank that paid six figures for a consultant. I love consultants, so please forgive me if I don't. They paid six figures for that mission statement to live on the wall in the bank. But my question is, there was no mechanisms or KPIs or engagement for it to live in the hearts and minds of people. So we all felt good about ourselves. We had a very expensive, very interesting, erudite and beautiful mission statement that looked at first glance like it was all things to all people and loving, but it was complete bull because it actually wasn't living in the hearts and minds of the next action. And that's the test, the next conversation. And the final point I'll make is humility. I did some research in my doctorate recently about humility, and I don't mean self-flagellation and false humility. I'm the worst in the world and you've all got to look down on me. I mean the humility that I as a leader don't have all the answers, but we collectively can. And I don't mean we manage by committee, because we don't get anything done. And if you see me on a board, I'm ruthless and scrupulous about the numbers and about the measures, about finding out how people are really going and what they really believe about the organisation. But if you're prepared to ask the question about what's really going on, you have to be prepared to actually accept it and act on it. Because I've heard leaders who ask and just don't want to act on it because it's just too bloody hard.
So really, you're talking about authenticity there.
Yeah.
Really focusing
People
on the
will smell-
reality.
Sorry, just a quick. People will smell out the people that say one thing and mean another, or have all the right platitudes in front of Frank Kelly on Radio National, and actually in the organisation we do it around here because I tell you to do it. I think people will smell a rat really quickly. So.
Thanks, Peter. Alistair.
I'd just add to it two things, I suppose. One is complexity. Like, it's a complex problem that's not going to be solved by, codes of conduct or something like that. There's a whole lot of things that you need to take into account. That's what I was saying before about we overestimate dispositional factors, so we focus on the individual. And I think we need to focus more on the situational and contextual factors. So, an example is banks. So banks have codes of conduct and all that sort of stuff, but they have a reward system that's in place which basically rewards churn and burn. So it's not aligned. And then the second thing is catching it early. So what I've seen in the research is that these, like I said, these things happen gradually and then suddenly. And the earlier you can catch it, the better. So to have any sort of mechanisms in place that are going to pick up on those sorts of things as quickly as possible and not to make excuses for bad behaviour and things is key.
Thanks, Alistair.